Once again, welcome you all for this course on design for biosecurity. First of all, I wish to thank all of you who have enrolled in this course, and on the MOOC platform, I am offering this course for the first time. Previously, this course I have offered as a regular course in the Department of Design, where I belong to, of Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur. And this is for the first time. This will be pan-India and across the border. What really inspired me for a course like this? So, almost 23 years back, I started my career in a lab which was working on detection of toxins which could be extremely detrimental for human health. And the whole idea for that project was to develop a database by using cell-based sensor platform to detect these toxins even before they harm the human health. And that was the beginning of my career on developing cell-based biosensors. And then on, a lot of research has went through, and currently the whole world is fighting to develop better and better biosensors for multiple reasons, from biosecurity to bioterrorism to bioweapon development, so on and so forth. So, what I will be talking to you is a 2-decade or little more than 2-decade long journey of mine in understanding the basic concepts and the basic philosophy of this course. And this course is essentially my journey of understanding why we need biosecurity. So, what is the basic of biosecurity and why you have to design strategies to counter or to safeguard our biological resources. So, in terms of a definition of biosecurity, look at. So, if you look at the definition, it says that it has been defined by the World Health Organization and the FAO, which is Food and Agriculture Organization, as a strategic and integrated approach to analyzing and managing relevant risks to human, animal and plant life and health and associated risks for the environment. So, in a way, what we are talking about is all the biological resources which are present across the globe. Of course, there is no one law, because the globe is divided into different countries, different continents, different regions. So, for different regions, different countries, there are different laws in order to safeguard their biological resources. But in order to understand that, I will take different case studies, mostly from Indian subcontinent, and some of the case studies will be global. To start off with, I will give you a glimpse of what really we are safeguarding. So, if you look at India itself, India is a very interesting spectrum of different region with different biodiversity. If you look at the Indian subcontinent, you will see almost there are 8 different biogeographic zones. Trans-Himalayan zone, as you could see on the slide. You have the Himalayan zone, which extend all the way up to the northeast. Then you have the desert zone, which is mostly the Rajasthan desert. Then you have the semi-arid zone, which includes part of Himachal Pradesh, Punjab, Haryana and the NCR region. Then you have the Western Ghats, which starts all the way from Maharashtra and goes down all the way to Kerala. Deccan Peninsula, which is central India, mostly Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, and as you go down into Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, these are all the Deccan Peninsula. Then the Gangetic Plains, which is all the way from Uttar Pradesh, Bihar and part of the West Bengal. And then you have the Northeast India. So, if you look at this whole biogeographic zone, you will realize that each one of these zones have a unique flora and fauna. As a matter of fact, the microbial population from the soil to the population of organisms in the water bodies in those regions, the plant diversity, the animal diversity are entirely different. See, for example, the diversity what you see in Sundarban Delta along the Bay of Bengal is entirely different from the diversity what you observe in the Kerala. If you look at the diversity of organisms in the mangrove forest, is entirely different from the diversity what you observe in the Kashmir Valley. Similarly, the diversity of organisms which survive in the desert region of Rajasthan are entirely different from what you see in the Deccan Plateau. Now, if we analyze this, you will realize that each one of these zones have a very unique habitat and they have to be conserved. Of course, there will be mixing. As you know, there are elephants which move from one state to another. And during the seasons, there are birds which migrate from one region to another. But those are all which have been happening for centuries together. This is not something new. But when we talk about, we are forcefully introducing certain organisms or certain plants or certain kind of microbes or certain kind of other biological element from one biogeographic zone to another biogeographic zone without assessing what it is going to lead to, we may falter, because each one of these biogeographic zones are well balanced, and these balances have been established over centuries, over millennia. Suddenly, any kind of change, initially the system will be able to handle it, but eventually the system will start to falter if the new entity which is entering into the system is detrimental to it. So, that is where the word came quarantine. We have to quarantine what is entering from one place to another place. And I will talk in detail that how these kind of things have actually affected Indian biodiversity in multiple ways. And if you look at the kind of distribution, you will see we have reptiles of 45.8%, plants which have a diversity of 33%, amphibians 55.8%, mammals 12%, and birds 4.5%. So, this is the kind of biodiversity we are talking about. And as a matter of fact, slowly we are realizing that we need to do a lot more than what we are doing currently to safeguard this extraordinary biodiversity prevailing in our country. Now, I will move on to the next slide, where if we look at the current status of the world, you have some alarming pictures currently. If you look at the agriculture, which is responsible for 80% of deforestation, this is a global picture. Now, we are giving a global picture. Now, food system releases 29% of global GHGs. Okay. Now, agriculture account for 70% of fresh water use. So, that means only 30% is left out fresh water for other consumptions. Now, 50% of the agriculture production lands are degraded. This degradation has happened because of excessive use of fertilizers, pesticides and other chemicals which are being used for food production. Similarly, the drivers linked to the food production cause 50% of the freshwater biodiversity loss. So, from forest to agricultural land to the water, we are seeing there is a decrease in the real productivity. Similarly, the food production causes 70% of the terrestrial biodiversity loss. So, this is the current picture. If you go through the Living Planet 2020 report, this is where we are standing. And because of this, you might wonder how this kind of biosecurity or biological losses are affecting biosecurity, because if we see something is reducing in one region, we try to introduce it from another region. And whenever you are introducing something from one region to another region, it affects the balance of one of the system where you are introducing it. And we will come with examples where you will realize how much check and balances have to be done in order to prevent or in order to avoid such disasters. Now, looking at the biodiversity loss, so if you look at this curve, which is again borrowed from the Living Planet 2020 report, historically, if you see the left hand side of the graph, where you could see that there are up to this, if you look at it, lot of animals across, lot of plants, water bodies, as well as lot of birds. Now, from 2020, if you look at it, the curve is falling down. As you could see, the numbers are reducing. If you follow, the number of biodiversity of trees, animals, and birds are decreasing. So, somewhere or other, this is the another case scenario like this. In next 25 to 100 years, bend this curve back like this. This is what they call as bending the curve of biodiversity loss. Serious measures have to be taken, and serious measures are to be implemented by every country, irrespective of whether it is a developing country or is it a developed country or it is an underdeveloped country. Each one of these countries will have to make a harmonious, concerted effort in order to preserve the biodiversity across the globe. Otherwise, there will be some serious issues which will come up in terms of food production, in terms of health risk, in terms of production of multiple products which human being needed for its survival, and especially they come from forest and all other natural resources. So, with this basic introduction, I move on to the next slide. So, in terms of this course has been divided into 12 weeks. So, the first 2 weeks we will be talking about the challenges of biosecurity, biowarfare and bioterrorism, and the need for continuous research in designing advanced biosensors. This is the first 2 weeks. So, essentially first week we will talk about multiple case studies and the historical perspective of that. The second week we will talk about specific case studies with the sensors which have been developed. Week 3 to week 10, we will talk about designing of electrochemical and solid state biosensors for biosecurity applications. Here what we will do, we will divide these weeks in such a way that we will talk about the basis of developing a sensor, basic electrochemical processes which are involved. Then we will talk about how those principles have been used to develop a sensor in a real life. So, on one hand we will have the basic principle, other hand we will have the application. This is how those week 3 to week 10 will run, because that is the real core where most of you will be interested to develop sensors in terms of either your research or industry or wherever you are joining for this course. Week 11, we will talk about the most emerging technology, designing human on a chip platforms and the relevance in biosecurity, vaccine development programs, and simulating short-term and long-term effects of biowarfare and bioterrorism agents. This is a very new emerging area where much of this research, which are otherwise being tested on animals, all these different kind of toxins, how they will have a long-term effect, are now being stopped, or rather the number of animal killing has been reduced, and instead human on a chip platform are taking the center stage, where we can study these different kind of agents which have biosecurity threats. And the last week we will talk about how to design a biosecurity facility. This will include what kind of quarantine measures have to be taken, how we can arrange the facility in such a way that if there is some kind of a hazard that remain contained in that region, then we will talk about what are the specific equipments, what kind of expertise you need, and how to manage such a facility at state level, at national level, at international level, because these biosecurity labs are of immense importance. Say one of the famous biosecurity lab in United States is CDC. So, similarly, every country has such labs and which are of immense significance in the decades and centuries to come. Now, in terms of the specific aspect of what we will be dealing in the week 1, there are basically 5 things we will be dealing: agriculture security, livestock production, how it is influenced, human health, pandemics and bioterrorism. These are the 5 things what we will be dealing with. In terms of bioterrorism, this is nothing new. It is very interesting to note that written history says that Bioterrorism Act or bioweapon have been used by humankind for almost last 800 years. The history is almost dates back to 13th century, where there are evidences which says, and we will be discussing about such evidences, where war has been fought using bioagents, unknowingly though, because microbiology was not, as a discipline was not there at that time, because there was no microscope. Nobody ever saw a microbes under the lens. So, lens was not discovered, but unknowingly during multiple wars, bioagents have been used. So, this bioterrorism or biowarfare is nothing new for humankind per se, but now we have far more sophisticated ways to create threat scenario or to annihilate the population. So, and second week what we will be talking about even far more case studies which are far more specific, need for economic sensors to meet the emerging threats of biosecurity. Specifically, we will talk about filovirus, including Ebola and the Marburg, case study of Bacillus anthracis, anthrax, which is another bioterror agent. Then we will talk about botulism toxin, and we will talk about insulin. This is a very regular molecule, but this specific molecule could be used for a very detrimental purpose. So, these are the first 2 weeks what we will be talking about. Now, talking about agriculture security, and we will be learning from examples. Now, when we talk about agriculture, we are talking about plants, trees and weeds, and I have put some of the words with red. Those are the ones I will be discussing in detail. The next part of agriculture is poultry, ducks and pigeons and several other birds which are being reared by human through centuries. Then you have the fishes, crabs and other aquatic animals which are being cultured or reared or are being used for food purpose by human across the world. Then you have livestock, which includes cows, buffaloes, goats, sheep, pigs, camel, yak and many other animals. They are either used for milk, leather, meat and several other aspects. Okay. Then you have the honeybees, silk, lac and other economical insect which are crucial part of products as well as helping in pollination. It includes the different kind of butterflies, different kind of insect which harms our crops and different kind of insects which helps our crops. Okay. Then you have the forest wealth and biodiversity. Forest is one of our major resource of biodiversity, from where we obtain a lot of products starting from proper wood for multiple applications from housing to big structures to a series of products from paper, pulp industry and all this are all product of the forest. The microbial biodiversity. This is one area microbes are all over the place, starting from water bodies to the plants to the soil. Microbial diversity is the key to nitrogen fixation, mineralization and helping the plants to acclimatize within the soil, especially the root microbes. Again, there are a series of microbes which are detrimental to plant health, animal health, and some of them are vector-borne disease causing microbes like malaria, likewise Lyme borreliosis, Lyme disease. Then there are several other microbes which are carried by several insects which bites human and causes disease. Then we have the ocean biodiversity, those countries which have a lot of water bodies around them, specifically in terms of India. It has on one hand Bay of Bengal, Indian Ocean, the Arabian Sea. If you look at Japan, they have two major water bodies on both sides. So, all these are part of the agriculture security. And what we are learning, for example, to start off with, here is a very interesting report and I am just quoted the report. India's biosecurity measures are outdated, letting invasive species thrive. This is a very interesting thing. If you look at the words, what it says, letting invasive species thrive, and this is what I am going to thrust upon. If you remember, in the very second slide I showed, when I showed the Indian map, I told you that India is divided into multiple biogeographic zones, and any new entity, if introduced in such biodiverse zones, it will affect the balance of that system. So, one has to be extremely careful that knowingly, if you are introducing something, you should have already done a thorough groundwork about it. If it is coming unknowingly, then too you have to be vigilant, you have to have a surveillance in place in order to check what are the long term effects of such things. So, this remark came from the experts who call for a national policy to safeguard against alien species. When we talk about alien species, we are talking about species which are not part of that particular biodiversity or zones. Especially such thing happens. See, for example, and what we will be discussing, that there is a specific kind of, say, flower which grows in a neighboring country, and I just brought the seeds and introduced in my country. Now, thing is that for me it is just a natural thing, I did not even bother, but interestingly, that particular seed or the plant genome which I have now brought into my country, maybe it may have detrimental effect to the plants in this community. I did it without even thinking, what a big deal, I just got few seeds. Maybe these new plants which are introduced into this new zone may have so much power that it could destroy the surrounding plants out there. So, what we will be discussing in our next lecture is 3 such case studies, at least 3 such case studies, where we have seen unknowing introduction of alien species into a biogeographic zone has affected the population in a bad manner, and legal measures had to be taken in order to prevent such things. So, I will close in here with this introduction. In the next class, we will pick up those case studies where we will talk about how these alien species are thriving and what are legal measures which have to be taken. Thank you.